Now, in every corner of this fan base, the conversation is the same, and the truth hurts. This Eagles offense isn't just stalling, it's moving backward. And the most shocking part, everyone watched it happen in real time. When you roll back the tape from that Bears game, you don't see a bad day. You see a pattern. Issues that started back in week 1, stayed there simmering, pushed aside, ignored, and now they've exploded right as we hit the most crucial stretch of the season. And when Nick Sirianni steps up to the podium and confirms that Kevin Patullo will remain the one calling plays, even after the mini-bye, even after everything we've seen, it feels like deja vu. Same script, same choices, same results, same frustrations. So go ahead and drop a like already, because what's coming next is something you don't want to miss. Because let's be honest, this isn't just about Patullo, even though the offense under his watch has become a weekly grind of predictable play calling, shaky rhythm, and no real identity. The problems stretch across the entire unit. Start with the quarterback, Jalen Hurts, a guy who's shown MVP caliber highs under coaches who maximized his strengths, looks completely disconnected. Since the bye week, outside of that brief spark at the start of the Dallas game, he hasn't processed well, hasn't looked confident, hasn't looked decisive. Against the Packers? Off. Against Detroit? Off. Against Chicago? It was one of his roughest outings, missing reads, missing throws, freezing when he normally fires. Yes, a good coordinator can elevate a struggling quarterback. We all saw that with Shane Steichen in 2022. But Hurts isn't just a victim of scheme, he's part of the issue. And when your franchise quarterback is playing hesitant while the scheme around him offers no easy answers, everything on offense collapses. Then look at the offensive line, the foundation of this franchise, the heart of everything this team has done well for years. Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Lane Johnson, 4 of the highest paid players at their positions, a group built to dominate. This season, they've been a disappointment. Run blocking has evaporated, pass protection has cracked, and Lane Johnson's injuries have only magnified the instability. When the offensive line loses its identity, the entire offense loses its backbone. That's exactly what we've watched. And because the line isn't winning, the run game is suffering. Saquon Barkley's vision hasn't always been perfect, but his problem isn't hesitation, it's opportunity. His yards before contact are down significantly from last year. He's running into clogged lanes snap after snap, and Patullo's decision to give him fewer than 15 carries in a cold, windy, close game? It makes no sense. It feels like this offense has no idea who it wants to be. No rhythm, no commitment, no plan. That lack of direction shows up everywhere. Execution? Off for weeks. Missed assignments, blown blocks, mental errors repeating themselves. Penalties? They're constant drive killers, forcing this offense into 3rd and long more than any team in football. And then you look at the scheme, and it's simply not dangerous, not creative, not evolving. Nick Sirianni keeps saying it's his offense, his structure, his system, but over his tenure, the scheme has rarely been dynamic. Route concepts predictable, motion limited, creativity minimal. Other teams use motion to stress defenses, create leverage, build mismatches. The Eagles use it to identify coverage pre-snap, and defenses have figured that out, disguising coverages easily, leaving the Eagles without counterpunches. You watch Ben Johnson's Bears offense on Friday, using poles, motion, misdirection, layered route concepts. Then you watch the Eagles. It doesn't even look like the same sport. And when Patullo talks about Sean Gailey being one of his biggest influences, it makes complete sense. The offense looks dated, rigid, outpaced by the modern NFL. His play-calling rhythm has been off all year. No flow, no sequencing, no identity. And the numbers back all of this up. 28th in success rate, producing positive plays at a lower rate than the Saints and the Jets, 2 teams with nowhere near the offensive talent the Eagles have. Think about how unacceptable that is when you have Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith, Dallas Goedert. This isn't an offense lacking stars. It's an offense lacking answers. So when Sirianni stands firm on Patullo, when he refuses to spark this offense with a change in voice or direction, it lands hard. Players don't look like they believe in what's being called. Hurts looks lost. Fans are fed up. And inside the facility, you can feel the stakes rising as the season slips toward a tipping point. But here's where I want to pause and toss this back to you, because this story isn't finished, and part 2 is going to dig deeper into what changes, if any, can realistically save this offense under Patullo. So let me ask you, after everything you've seen, do you think sticking with this structure is the right move, or is this team refusing to face the truth? Picking up right where we left off, The real question now isn't just what went wrong, but what can realistically be fixed with Kevin Patullo still holding the play sheet. Because as much as fans want a clean reset, Nick Sirianni made his decision, and now the offense has to somehow claw its way back to relevance without a major change in leadership. And that brings us to the uncomfortable reality of what this coaching staff can adjust immediately, without replacing anyone, to give this unit a pulse again. Sirianni, to his credit, has made in-season adjustments before, and that history is the only reason some fans still have a sliver of optimism. But the margin for error is gone. This team is out of time, out of excuses, and entering a stretch where even minor improvements could be the difference between salvaging the season or watching it collapse completely. Sirianni admitted that everything was evaluated during the mini-bye: scheme, play-calling tendencies, personnel usage. And buried inside that acknowledgement is the possibility, however small, that he's finally ready to override what isn't working. He's done it before. Back in 2021, when his own play-calling sputtered, he handed control to Shane Steichen and watched the entire offense transform. In 2023, when the defense cratered, he pulled play-calling from Sean Desai and gave it to Matt Patricia, a move that ultimately backfired, but still showed a willingness to tear up the plan mid-season. Even last year, the team shifted its offensive identity on the fly, minimizing turnovers by leaning heavily on the run. Sirianni will act when he feels he has no choice. The difference now is that he's refusing to pull the obvious lever. So what levers remain? Let's start with the simplest one. Jalen Hurts must run more. Reports say Hurts doesn't want as many designed runs in the game plan. And look, his durability absolutely matters. But the offense is broken without that threat. When the quarterback run element disappears, the defense shrinks the field, takes away Barkley's lanes, crowds the middle, disrupts everything. A few early quarterback keepers can change an entire game, force defenders to hesitate, widen gaps, open shot plays, settle Hurts into a rhythm. His hesitancy as a passer this year only makes the argument stronger. When he's thinking too much, running frees him. You've seen it in playoff games. You've seen it in their best regular season stretches. It's not about putting him in harm's way recklessly. It's about unlocking the version of the offense that actually works. Next, they have to embrace tempo, and not just when they're trailing or desperate. Tempo flips the entire personality of this offense. It stresses defenses, eliminates the long pre-snap stagnation that has killed this unit's rhythm, forces Hurts to play in a freer, more instinctive style. Whenever this team has looked like themselves, the Rams game, moments against the Giants, stretches against Minnesota, tempo was the catalyst. Against the Bears, their one real drive didn't come through complicated scheme. It came from speeding up, getting to the line, and letting talent take control. For a unit drowning in overthinking, forcing the game to move faster simplifies everything. From there, the fix extends into structure. More RPOs, more under-center looks. These aren't gimmicks, they're tools that accentuate the roster. RPOs threaten the edge, freeze linebackers, and create natural openings in the quick game, something Hurts desperately needs right now. Under-center formations unlock deep play action and stabilize the run game. We all saw what happened when the Eagles committed to it against Minnesota and New York. Chunk plays, balance, confidence. The offense hasn't looked anything like that in recent weeks because those elements have vanished. Then there's the personnel glaring issue. Tank Bigsby has to play more. If your offensive line can't generate push for Saquon, then you need a back who creates his own yards through force. Bigsby runs downhill, hits contact hard, and fits a struggling line better than a patient runner. Meanwhile, you have personnel changes on the table that Sirianni hasn't pulled the trigger on, options like Drew Kendall or Willie Lampkin that could jolt competition or stabilize weak spots. Doing nothing isn't working. Trying something isn't a risk anymore, it's survival. And finally, something every fan sees clearly, Greg Calcaterra cannot keep getting meaningful snaps. He's not blocking well enough to justify being on the field in heavy sets, and the tape shows it clearly. Plays are being blown up because of that one weak link. When Cam Latta stepped in, the offense functioned better, 3-for-3 passing, cleaner edges, more physicality. These are obvious adjustments, the kind that shouldn't require a crisis to implement. But here we are. This is the crossroads. The offense has the talent to compete for a championship, but the structure around it is dragging it toward mediocrity. If Sirianni really meant what he said about evaluating everything, then these changes must happen now. Not next week, not after another loss. Now, because the season is slipping, the locker room looks frustrated, and the identity of this team is fading by the week. So let me throw this to you as we wrap up part 2. Do you believe these adjustments are enough to wake up this offense? Or do you think this team is simply delaying the inevitable? And if you're still here with me, make sure to hit subscribe, drop a like to support the channel, and check out the videos on the screen for more Eagles breakdowns. And that brings us to the heart of the conversation every fan has been having since Friday night. Even if these adjustments make sense on paper, will this coaching staff actually commit to them when the lights come on? Because it's one thing to acknowledge problems in a press conference, it's another to change your DNA in the middle of a season that's already spiraling. When you watch this offense right now, the frustration isn't just the mistakes, it's the stubbornness. It's the sense that everyone on the field is waiting for someone else to fix the problem while the weeks slip away. You see it in the body language. Jalen Hurts staring at the tablet on the sideline like he's trying to solve a puzzle with pieces missing. Saquon Barkley getting swallowed in the backfield before he even has time to make a cut. A.J. Brown running routes with no space or leverage. The offensive line, once the pride of this franchise, looking disconnected and overwhelmed. None of that is talent-related. These are players who have dominated this league. When an entire unit regresses at once, that's not coincidence, that's structural. That's why the idea of running it back with the same play caller hit so hard for this fan base. Not because Kevin Patullo is the only problem, but because keeping him in place feels symbolic of a larger refusal to adapt. When the system is broken, loyalty becomes a liability. Yet Sirianni is betting that tweaks, not changes, can turn things around. And maybe he's right. Maybe tempo, more RPOs, more designed runs, and smarter personnel choices will be enough to stabilize this offense. But the margin for error is razor thin now. The players know it. The coaches know it. The locker room knows it. And the fans? They feel it more than anyone, because they've watched this team go from a feared, aggressive offense that dictated the pace of games to one of the least efficient units in the league, a group ranked below the Saints and the Jets in success rate despite having far more firepower. That's not just underperformance, that's misuse. The most telling moment might have been during the Bears game, when the broadcast cut to Hurts looking defeated, confused, almost detached. That's not the quarterback we know. That's not the guy who dragged this team to a Super Bowl. That's a player operating in a system that isn't helping him. And when your quarterback is lost, the rest of the offense follows. So what happens now? The Chargers game becomes more than a matchup. It becomes a referendum, a measuring stick, a litmus test for whether this coaching staff truly understands the urgency of the situation. Because Jesse Minter isn't going to let you off the hook. He's one of the sharpest young defensive minds in football, and he's going to bring pressure, disguise looks, force Hurts to process quickly. If the Eagles walk into this game with the same stale script they've run all year, we already know how it ends. But if Sirianni really did evaluate everything during the mini-bye, if he's willing to loosen his grip on a scheme that has grown predictable, if he lets Patullo make changes or overrides what's not working, then maybe, just maybe, this offense can rediscover a spark. It doesn't have to become elite overnight. It just has to become functional, efficient, competent, capable of sustaining drives instead of stalling out on self-inflicted wounds. And here's the truth that no one inside the building will say out loud. The players need to feel hope. They need to feel like the staff is actively trying to fix things, not just riding the season out on autopilot. A new wrinkle, a new rhythm, a commitment to change that can energize a locker room desperate for direction. The fans would feel it. The players would feel it. The entire narrative around this team would shift. Because at the end of the day, this roster isn't built for a wasted year. This roster is built to contend. And the only thing standing between the Eagles and the offense they should be is a willingness to evolve. Monday night will tell us everything, whether this coaching staff truly grasped the moment, or whether they're content to keep hoping things magically improve. And before you head out, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like to help push this video to more Eagles fans, and tap one of the videos on the screen right now for more breakdowns, reactions, and updates. This fan base deserves answers, and we're going to keep digging until we get them. And if we're being honest, that's what makes this moment feel so heavy for the fan base. It's not just the losing. Eagles fans can stomach losing if there's a sense of direction, a sense of growth, a sense that the coaching staff is building toward something. What's hard to endure is watching a team with this much talent look like it's running the same broken script week after week, hoping for a different outcome. That's why frustration has boiled over, not because fans expect perfection, but because the problems are so obvious, so fixable, and yet so consistently ignored. You can feel that tension everywhere. In the calls to sports radio, in the comments online, in the reaction shots of players on the sideline, even in the way the offense carries itself between plays, that subtle combination of hesitation and disbelief. This wasn't supposed to be the identity of the 2024 Eagles. Not with a franchise quarterback in his prime, a premier running back added in the offseason, 2 elite receivers, a top-tier tight end, and one of the most experienced offensive lines in football. When a roster is stacked like this and the product looks disorganized, the spotlight shifts to the structure itself. And make no mistake, this locker room feels it too. Players may not voice it publicly, they're professionals, they're loyal, they're focused, but body language never lies. You can only repeat, we just need to execute so many times before it starts to sound like a shield instead of an answer. Eventually, execution becomes a reflection of preparation. Preparation becomes a reflection of coaching. And coaching becomes a reflection of whether the vision for this offense still makes sense in the modern NFL. That's the crossroads the Eagles are standing on as Monday Night Football approaches. Not just a game, not just another week, but a chance to show whether this season still has a pulse. Whether Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo can adapt under pressure. Whether the offense can rediscover an identity before it's too late. Every great team hits adversity. The difference is how quickly they respond. Some teams adjust, evolve, reinvent themselves mid-season. Others dig in, double down, and watch the season slip through their fingers because they refuse to change the one thing that needed changing. What's eerie about this situation is how preventable so many of the issues are. The backbone of the offense, tempo, motion, variation, decisiveness, has been sitting untouched. The personnel tweaks are straightforward. The schematic adjustments are not radical shifts, but basic evolutions. This isn't asking the team to become something new. It's asking the team to become who they were supposed to be. And that's what makes the next chapter so compelling. Because when a team is pushed into a corner, when criticism rises, when pressure mounts, when fans demand answers, a fork in the road appears. One path is the beginning of a turnaround, the moment where everything clicks, the moment you look back on months later and say that was when the season changed. The other path leads to the unraveling of a coaching staff and identity that once looked unbreakable. This game will tell us which path the Eagles have chosen, not with words, not with excuses, not with promises, but with how they call plays, how they adjust, how they respond to adversity on national television with everyone watching. Because the reality is simple, talented teams don't stay broken unless they choose to. So now I want to hear from you, the ones who live and breathe this team. After everything we've broken down, after everything you've watched this season, and knowing what's at stake heading into Monday night, do you still believe the Eagles can turn this offense around before it's too late? And maybe the most fascinating part of all this is how quickly things can shift when a team finally reaches its breaking point. Sometimes it only takes one game, one drive, one adjustment, one burst of urgency to snap a unit out of its sleepwalk. That's what makes this moment so unpredictable, because the Eagles aren't a talent-poor team searching for miracles. They're a talented team searching for clarity, and clarity can arrive suddenly if the right switch gets flipped. You think back to teams in past seasons around the league that looked completely lost halfway through the year, only to catch fire once their coaches stopped forcing a square peg into a round hole. You look at the way offenses change when they simplify the playbook, let their quarterback play freely, and build around what players do well instead of what the scheme demands. That's the energy fans want to see from this coaching staff. Not perfection, not reinvention, but acknowledgement that the current course isn't working and the willingness to pivot before the season becomes a missed opportunity. Because the truth is, every player on this offense has shown who they can be at their best. Hurts at his best is decisive, confident, and dangerous when he mixes his legs with his arm. Saquon at his best